What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and we're going to be reviewing or previewing the DFS slate for this coming weekend. I believe this is UFC Atlanta. I was away last weekend, but actually got second in the big GPP. I put in my stuff before I left, and just one less knockdown by Joshua Van, and I would have actually gotten first. But that's the way it goes. This week is a very, I think, DFS friendly week. There's a couple of things that make it a little tricky though. So the good news is that we have what 13 fights. Okay. The bad news is that there is, well, it's not that bad. I mean, there's one repricing that is going to be extremely popular. So we're going to have to deal with that. The good news though is that the main event, while it's strong, I don't think it's 100% likely. I mean, 100% necessary to lock it in. Last week we did a really good job with our lineup building. I didn't do a lineup construction build, but as James McCool kind of pointed out, he did kind of an analysis of everything, and even though I had 95% pretty much Marab, I ended up with like an average dupe count of about 7, and that was actually I actually did quite a bit of work to make that happen, and so not not to understate how important it was to use the portfolio manager tool from Pater. That does a really good job of predicting dupes. So we'll get into that when we do the lineup construction video, probably tomorrow evening or first thing Saturday. Okay, so as far as just kind of identifying who good plays are, I think there are some pretty obvious, even underdogs that you might want to play. I think that overall, it's a slate where the plays are somewhat obvious, which means a couple things. Number one, that you're going to see some chalk, but how chalky can somebody be if there's going to be like 10 or 12 like really good plays? So I think overall, I do think it's a very good DFS slate. I think that you'll be able to compete for a very low dupe lineup without it being one of those lineups that has no chance to win. And we'll get into more of that again when we do the lineup construction. But let's just go through fight by fight and see what's up here. So first fight of the night, right off the gate, you have Jamie Lynn Horth against the Vanessa Demopoulos. And right now, I mean, you're really, you don't want to do this, but first fight of the night, $9,400 woman fighter with a very poor inside the distance line. You'll see, her inside the distance line is like plus 500. But the thing is that she has such upside because of her style here. She has such a huge size advantage over the Vanessa Demopoulos, and she does have this desire to go for takedowns here that you combine that with the fact that Vanessa Demopoulos tends to give up a lot of takedowns, and Jamie Lynn Horth could end up being a very strong play. And it's something nobody really wants to do. Like, you don't really want to play this very low level women's fighter at 9,400 with a terrible inside the distance line. And not only that, but even these fights where she's taken them down, it's not like she's had a million takedowns. I mean, she doesn't even really do too much with them. So I do want to say though that this is the type of play that if things work out, you're going to be very happy. I mean, if she does get like several takedowns and probably best off she doesn't finish Demopoulos and just keeps on taking her down over and over again, she could end up with like a 110, 115, 120 score at very low ownership. So she's not going to show up in almost any of the optimals, which is going to make her a pretty solid GPP play. Now, again, you do run the risk of your night being severely hampered pretty quickly because, I mean, quite honestly, most likely she wins kind of a boring decision. She has one of these wins like she's had in the past, with 60, 70 points, but the style clash seems to set up pretty nicely for Horth to get a big score in her win. So right off the bat, I mean, this is not a play that's going to show up in optimals or in projections, or the Sims might not even get there. But I'm definitely going to have a little bit of Jamie Lynn Horth. Vanessa Demopoulos, unfortunately, her issue is that not only does she have very low winning chances, but as I mentioned, Horth is not going to be very popular, so you don't even get leverage when she does win. So right off the bat, I think Horth is a pretty good, very contrarian play, I think. All right, Phil Rowe against Angelusa. This is a very, very thematic type of fight. You have one fighter who I don't want to say needs, but is surely a hell of a lot more likely to get takedowns than the other. And you'll see that fights like this Fletcher fight with the 124 points with 1,000,000 strikes, and Reese McKee even with the 6 takedowns. I mean, he's just extraordinarily live for a big score in his wins, where Phil Rowe in his wins is just very, very striking based. So his path to victory in GPPs is really reliant on his inside the distance line, which is not very strong. I mean, Philip Rose inside the distance line is like plus 350. Given his price, it's almost a full fade. So Angelusa, one of several very, very strong mid-range to even to underdog grapplers, which really are very, very strong plays. Speaking of which, I mentioned earlier, so Ricky Simone, he was originally scheduled to fight Charles Jourdain, and I think that would have been a much better situation because I probably would have recommended Simone anyway. And in that situation, Simone would not have been the 40% owned fighter that he's going to be this week with this matchup. And the reason for that, really simply, is that he is now, instead of a plus one, minus 180 against Jourdain against Cameron Smotherman. Now we're talking about a plus minus 500 favorite. So he at 8,700 is completely mispriced. You factored in as well, forget even the money line, his path to victory is riddled with fantasy points. So either getting knockouts or most likely a bunch of takedowns. You just can't avoid this as being the best play on the board. Does it have to win? No, but I think that not playing him in cash or not playing him in low risk is a huge blunder. Now in GPPs, again, you really should be playing both sides of this type of thing, because one thing about Smotherman is his price is fair. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if his price is bad. I mean, he's a $6,500 fighter who is going to win the fight about 20% of the time. And what you have going for yourself here is that if, in fact, he does win, he's going to be taking out all of that ownership that's going to be coming on to Ricky Simone. So same as I recommended what was it, a couple of weeks ago? I forget who it was, but there was somebody with an almost identical situation. And I said, you know what? You play him, but also play the other side. Just because you're going to get all kinds of, not Hadley. Boy, why did I forget already who this was? Well, whoever it was this big theoretical lock that just got crushed. Okay. And so the underdog was I think was optimal. But certainly it created quite a bit of leverage. So I do think that while Simone is definitely the best play on the board, you certainly have to play Smotherman in your GPPs. Okay, Ochoa versus Durden. All right. So you have Durden, who I believe is an extraordinarily logical underdog in DFS here. We're going to get to that in a second, but first we look at Ochoa. I mean, Ochoa inside the distance is what, like plus 160 or so, 170. That's actually pretty good for 8,600. So he looks good, but Durden, on the other hand, I mean, he has that style that you don't have to worry about his score if he wins. I mean, I doubt he's going to win here and not score a bunch. whether it be getting a knockout or look at this, 11 takedowns here, 4 takedowns here. He he constantly puts pressure on. He goes for volume and knockouts. And, you know, if he does win, which he's going to win, what, 35, 40% of the time at least? I mean, he's probably going to score enough. So I do like both sides of this fight. And Durden is one of several very, very strong um, mid-range underdogs on the slate. This next fight doesn't really do anything for me at all. Malcolm Wellmaker versus Chris Matinho. To play a $9,800 fighter, it's just very hard in DFS. Okay. Because there are other fighters that are going to most likely score more than he will. They just won't score as more than he will as often as he will. In other words, you have a whole bunch of these $91, $92 fighters who are probably going to be competing for the same type of score as Wellmaker. And while you don't know which one of them is going to necessarily do it, the fact is that Wellmaker, the reason why he's going to project well is not so much because of his ceiling, but it's because of the consistency. Because he's a big 18-1 favorite. When you look at his inside the distance line, it's probably going to be what? I would say minus 500. Yeah. And it's not just because he's going to be going to this. He's live to get these 130-point wins. It's just he's going to win inside the distance a lot because he's going to win the fight a lot. Okay. So his inside the distance line is really, really strong, which is great. But you look at his round one prop, and he's like even money. Okay. So that means 50% of the time he wins the fight in the first round. But let me ask you this. I mean, how often does he even make optimal at 9,800 if he wins in the first round? Remember, it's not like a card where you have no underdogs to play. It's going to be very difficult to get to a $9,800 fighter on this type of card. You have all these type of mid-range fighters, like you have Simone, 8,700, who has a very, very strong likelihood of winning. Unless you're going to want to play like stuff like Usman, who I guess is fine. Maybe in Linus with Demopoulos. I mean, to get to a $9,800 fighter is just very, very difficult. Maybe I didn't say it that well with respect to the presence of underdogs, because there are the presence of decent underdogs, but they're just not cheap enough to justify paying $9,800 for somebody like this. So if Wellmaker, I knew he was also going to get takedowns or something like that, that would mean something, but I don't know. Let's take a look even at his record here. The good news is that he does have first round KOs in his last 2 fights, but he's got a 5-round majority decision here. What is that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's not as if Chris Matinho is that good or anything, but he did go 3 rounds with O'Malley. It's got to be something, right? Maybe not. Maybe that doesn't mean anything. He's got a couple of wins. I don't know. Yeah, so I'm not the type that's going to pay $9,800 for this guy. So that's just the way it is. Let's move up the card to Michael Chiesa versus Court McGee. I think Court McGee. Well, let's take a look at this here for a second. I was about to say I think Court McGee might be sort of live. Let's take a look at the inside the distance lines first. This Michael Chiesa play always doesn't sit well with me. But let's look at the inside the distance line. Inside the distance, it says Chase is only at plus 200. I mean, that's really, really atrocious for a $9,200 fighter. The only way you could justify this is he was getting a whole bunch of takedowns, but this does not seem to be what's going to happen in this fight. McGee is very, very tough. He has, I think he might have I'll say as good wrestling, but he's got similar wrestling to Chiesa, maybe. Chase 2 takedowns against Griffin, got the sub. And what'd that get him, by the way? 75 fantasy points. I mean, it's like no significant strikes. I mean, I don't know. I think Chase is a terrible player. I think if anything, I would probably try some Court McGee. Um, this is kind of crazy. His first round sub against Tim Means. I don't know. Maybe this is just asking for trouble to play Court McGee here, but I definitely don't want to play Chiesa with that terrible inside the distance line at 9,200. All right, this is one we identified before a couple of weeks ago: Rodolfo Bellato versus Paul Craig. Uh, let's just see if anything has changed with his inside the distance line. I'm sure it's going to be still minus 200 or wherever it was. Bellato inside the distance, even better. It's like minus 225. So that to me is a very, very strong play. You know, in addition to that, he also does have the option to get his takedowns on Paul Craig if he wants them. I don't believe he should, because the only way I think that Paul Craig stays in this fight is if this goes to the ground. And then Paul Craig does his Paul Craig stuff and gets these funky submission on him. But I think that Bellato, I think he's mispriced here, honestly. I think 9,300 is way too low. I mean, to compare him to Chiesa, I mean, I think it's not even close. So I think Bellato is extraordinarily strong. Um, and I just don't think Paul Craig wins often enough to be a good underdog. Well, I don't know. Let's think about this for a second. So he's plus 300, which means he probably wins the fight about what, 20, 25% of the time. The thing is, I don't know. How popular is Bellato going to be? Maybe not that popular. So if that's the case, maybe Paul Craig is not good leverage. I don't know. Thinking this through, I definitely think Bellato is a very, very strong underdog here. And I just think there are too many decent mid-range underdogs to worry about playing Paul Craig as a punt. I mean, if you're going to play anybody as a punt, I mean, let's talk about this next fight. You have Umar Sy versus Alonzo Menafield. I think the pricing is very similar here. Yeah, I mean, pretty close. 9,500, 6,700. I mean, this problem here is just the win odds again, minus 700. I mean, I'd like to kind of go on a little bit of name recognition and, say, hey, maybe Alonzo Menifield's got a shot here, but you just can't play these plus 500 fighters. They just don't win often enough. Uh, let's take a look at Sy inside the distance. I mean, plus 160. That's just kind of okay at 9,500. I mean, what you really want is for him to also be getting a bunch of takedowns. So let's kind of take a look at this. Um, 2 takedowns, 2 takedowns here. Sure. So yeah, okay. Uh, fair enough. I mean, this is just more. You know what? This is a more evidence of that. I don't want to play Michael Chiesa, and it's also evidence that you don't really need to play Wellmaker, and it's also evidence that Jamie Lynn Horth is going to be 1%. I mean, why would you play Jamie Lynn Horth when you could play Omar Sy or Rodolfo Bellato? Maybe because you're probably supposed to play those two. Anyway, uh, so definitely Sy's a good favorite. Menafield just doesn't win often enough. What's the difference between any of those fights and this one? Mansour Abdul Malik against Cody Brundage, another huge inside the distance line, I presume. Let's just take a look. Uh, inside the distance, minus 600. And what's he in the first round? Like probably minus 150. He's minus 100 here. So again, another indication of why you're not supposed to be playing Willmaker, because what's his name? Abdul Malik here has just as good of a chance to win in the first round, and he's cheap. Um, let's just see something. Let's see, first round minus plus 110. And again, unfortunately, Cody Brundage just doesn't win often enough to be playable. Cody Garbrandt versus Jaime Barcelos. All right, let's take a look at this. First, let's take a look at the prices here. Barcelos, 8,500. Okay, so now we have at least a reasonable price. But with that reasonable price comes some inferior metrics, obviously. Let's look at Barcelos inside the distance. We don't want Pilato. Let's look at Barcelos inside the distance. He's going to be plus 300, 250. That's not good enough. The only thing you might want to argue is that maybe Barcelos has some grappling upside, but keep something in mind. Like you see in his last fight, he had 8 takedowns. That was his clear path to victory, okay, against Talbot. I mean, that was his only path to victory. And once he got the first one, you could just tell that, Talbot has just nothing to offer as far as his takedown defense. I don't know. I just have this feeling that Cody Garbrandt's been around a little bit. And I don't think it's going to be as easy to take him down a bunch of times. The only problem is he hasn't really fought anybody that goes for a bunch of takedowns. I don't know. I definitely don't like Cody Garbrandt here. I think I much prefer, as far as mid-range underdogs, I'd much prefer the Cody Durden just because of the takedown upside. I certainly prefer, well, maybe I prefer Cody Garbrandt to Philip Rowe, but they're pretty much the same as far as I'm concerned. The question is whether I want to play Barcelos here. I mean, he's definitely going to be lower owned than Simon. That's not saying much, though, because Simon's going to be super popular. Who'd I rather play, Ochoa or Barcelos? I think they're very similar. So, yeah, I think I don't really like the Garbrandt side. I think Barcelos, I'm going to get to him in the big GPPs. That's for sure. All right. Kind of obvious underdog number, I guess, 4. I mean, because there can be 2 others coming up, is going to be Andre Petroski here. So you have this classic, striker versus grappler matchup. If you told me this fight was going to be on the feet the whole time, Shabazian would be a lock. Just would be. If you told me that Petroski was going to get takedowns, I would say Petroski is a lock. That's just the way it is. And the thing is that Petroski at 7,400, his wins are going to score just plenty, okay, to say the least. So I regard Petroski as a very similar play to Cody Durden. Like these two are we'll get to another one in a minute, but these two are very, very strong GPP underdogs. Now, on the other hand, Shabazian at 8,800 is a very strong play in his own right, because you look at his inside the distance line, I bet you it's close to minus 110. Let's see, maybe not quite, but let's see. Not bad. About minus 110 at 8,800. I mean, that's an extraordinarily strong price. And again, it's very style dependent. If he can just get all over Andre Petroski and just get after him before he gets taken down, he can seriously win the first round and outscore all these turkeys that we talked about already. So, and because of that, that's why I think Petroski is a very, very strong underdog, because I think that Shabazian is going to get some ownership because of the things that I just said. So I think that Petroski, how do I rate him with Durden, for example? Well, who's going to be higher owned? I mean, Shabazian or Ochoa? I'd have to think it would be Shabazian. I mean, Ochoa just doesn't have the same type of inside the distance line. So I think that Petroski is probably a little bit better than Durden, but I think they're both extraordinarily strong players. And then we get to another, which I think is a very just sort of an obvious underdog here, and that would be Miranda Maverick. So, I mean, her path to victory here, I mean, first of all, she has a size advantage over Rose. So I can't imagine her with a game plan other than going for takedowns here. or at the very least trying to use her size to bully her up against the cage or something like that. So I think that in her wins, she's going to score decently. But the reason why I don't like her as much as some of these others we talked about is because I don't think Rose Namajunas is going to be like more than 10% owned. Okay. She's usually a fighter where fantasy points go to die. Okay. With the exception of these 5-round fights. Okay. Against Cortez, she got her 5 takedowns and scored a bunch, but she's not getting takedowns against Miranda Maverick. I mean, she usually does not score too many points. So as a matter of fact, so because of that, I don't think she could be highly owned, which means I don't think Maverick gets the same amount of leverage. But I do think that Maverick at 7,100, that kind of tips her, pretty close to the dirt to dirt. Okay, so this is why punting at these underdogs, some of these other underdogs, it's not really necessary because you do have these very, very strong metric-based underdogs here, between Durden and Maverick and Petrosky. And we'll get to Usman in a second. So if this wasn't clear, I don't want to play Rose Namajunas here. There's just way too many better favorites. Even at low ownership, I just don't think it's worth it. So we get to this main event, and as you've seen, and we've talked about some extraordinarily strong plays here, which is why I mentioned that this fight is not a lock. I mean, you don't have to play this fight, and because it's a 5-round fight, you're going to get like a bunch of ownership here. I mean, because the optimals, they project 5 rounds of stuff going on. Is Buckley going to be the highest owned favorite, though, on the slate? No, I do think that Simon is going to be the highest owned overall. Is Buckley going to be higher owned than, say, I don't know, Bellato? Can they really do that? I mean, can they make Buckley higher owned than Bellato? I don't know. I don't think they can. Maybe at the end of the day, the main event might end up being not as high owned as it usually is. Because normally, you know what I would say? I would say, like, hey, Usman, I mean, look, even though he's fallen on some hard times, I mean, he's got all kinds of wrestling upside at 7,200. 5 rounds. I mean, if he wins, how does he not score a ton and break the slate? So normally he would be the most popular underdog, but I don't know. I mean, Petrosky, Durden, those are, I think, 2 extraordinarily strong plays here, which I think are going to take some ownership away from Usman. So, look, you have to play him. You have to play Buckley, but you don't have to play them in all of your lineups. Okay, I will just kind of leave it at that. So we've talked about a lot, and it is a little bit hard to prioritize here. I mean, it seems like 7 hours ago where I was touting Jamie Lynn Horth. And since then, I think I've kind of proven that it's a terrible play. But yet still, I mean, 8% owned? What am I getting? And what am I going to get on Jamie Lynn Horth? Probably 9% owned. Let me tell you something. Give me a 120 to start off the card. I will be more than happy to root for boredom for the rest of the night. But look, this is the reality. Simone, best play on the board. I guess the main event is the next best, I suppose. But all these underdogs like Shabazian and Malik and even you want to go down a little bit, play Ochoa. Angelusa, we forgot about him, right? So let's start with who you're going to fade. Okay, I don't think you're playing Demopoulos. I don't think you're playing Rowe. I don't think you're playing Coutinho. I don't think you're playing Chiesa or Court McGee. I don't think you're playing Wellmaker. I wouldn't play Craig, Menafield, Brundage. Maybe this Barcelos whole fight is probably a fade, but at the very least, I'm not playing Garbrandt. So there are guys that there's ways to make this card a little bit smaller. But this grappling upside is no joke. Okay, but in this one, and wait, where's Durden? Like all four of these guys, okay, Simone, Lusa, Petrowski, Durden. I mean, I do see, by the way, I do see variations where Usman does not wrestle. Okay. Um, but I don't know, this fight against Chimaev, he was not that bad. I don't know. I've tried this before. I try to like make reasons to play these guys on the way down against the guys on the way up, and it never seems to work. I might end up having to do it though. I don't know. But I think that these four plays are just kind of the keys. Four kind of mid-range plays that can just kind of, you know, make your lineups go without costing too much. And that's pretty much all I have for now. I don't think we're gonna do a betting breakdown this week, but we are gonna do a lineup construction video for sure. And we use SaberSim. We'll do the portfolio manager thing with Pater and all that stuff. But until then, this is Sheets signing off. Welcome back and good luck.